Did the Dallas Cowboys fleece the Pittsburgh Steelers? Welcome to Cowboys Morning Brew. Thanks for joining me with my cup of coffee. This is a large one because I need it, and I'm going to be honest, I'm already halfway through. So thank you guys for tuning in to Cowboys Morning Brew on Boom Broadcasting and Fans First Sports Network. I want to take this week to really dive into this offense because it appears that the Dallas Cowboys' strength is their offense. And we could point that to Brian Schottenheimer and the system he's put in place. We can point that to Dak Prescott and the MVP caliber season he's having. We could point that to Javonte Williams and one of the best free agent signings for a bargain this past offseason. We could credit Clayton Adams and the new offensive coordinator who's had to do makeshift offensive lines to get the team to a 500 record when a month ago it looked like this team was going to be in the dumps and could very well be 0-5 like first-year coach Aaron Glenn is now. But I am the first to tell Jerry Jones that he was wrong. And I am very critical of some of the moves that Jerry Jones has made, especially recently. When you trade away your best defensive player, you're going to have the worst defense in the NFL. I still feel like the Micah Parsons trade, if it doesn't result in a Super Bowl with Kenny Clark on this roster, then this will be a bust. And I do not believe this defense is anywhere close to competing for a championship, which is a shame because this offense is playing at a very elite level, and they're the only reason we've won a couple of games. In addition, they're the only bright spot for this Dallas Cowboys roster. So I am the first one to say Jerry makes mistakes. And I was critical somewhat of Brian Schottenheimer, and then he won me over in the offseason. Then I was critical of nobody in the backfield. You draft Jaden Blue, and Jaden Blue's not playing now, but you're going off Javonte Williams, who has 4 years into the league and has never posted a 1,000-yard rushing season. So I was critical. I was also critical of George Pickens and trading basically a one-year rental for George Pickens. But I'll be honest, looking at what has happened here recently, I want to tell you if George Pickens trade was a fleece. So back in May, the Pittsburgh Steelers sent George Pickens to Dallas for a 3rd and a 5th round pick. Of course, they also gave us a 6th round selection. And a lot of Pittsburgh fans and the Pittsburgh media said that George Pickens was a head case. George Pickens, in his final year of his contract, wants to be paid like a number one receiver. All of these headlines coming out of Pittsburgh, but the Cowboys at the time desperately needed somebody next to CeeDee Lamb to draw attention away from him. Because with all the pieces on this offense, Dak can only go as far as CeeDee Lamb goes. CeeDee Lamb goes as far as this running game goes. But you also have the wide receiver opposite of Lamb. Lamb's been blessed with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. But we saw last year CeeDee Lamb was still an elite receiver, but there was nobody else that defenses had to fear. And so what did that do? That stunted the receiving core. It stunted the quarterback position because Dak was not only having just one target, but he also got hurt. So now your backups are in. And we couldn't run the ball. And apparently Rico Dowdle is talking, don't worry, we will talk later this week about Rico Dowdle. But the Dallas Cowboys needed a receiver opposite of Lamb, and so they traded for George Pickens. Whether it is a one-year rental or not, the Cowboys did negotiate with one of David's players. Of course, the Micah Parsons trade came because Jerry didn't want to negotiate with him. And then I was worried that the Cowboys wouldn't get a deal done with Tyler Smith or George Pickens. Well, the Cowboys have gotten a deal done to keep Tyler Smith as the centerpiece of the Cowboys offensive line. All of this to say, the Cowboys make bad decisions, but George Pickens might be the right one because nobody could have foreseen CeeDee Lamb getting hurt. And now George Pickens has the opportunity to prove not only two things as he goes into contract negotiations. One, he can be a number one option. He's been a number one option these last 2 weeks, might be the number one option again as CeeDee Lamb is likely to sit out this Sunday against the Carolina Panthers. But George Pickens is also rebuilding whatever character, reputation, any concerns. He's putting them aside because people are saying that George Pickens is probably a top 3 character in the locker room, one of the top 3 people, one of the top 3 human beings. And George Pickens is doing a really good job of making the Pittsburgh Steelers rue and regret trading George Pickens. The Pittsburgh Steelers decided instead of George Pickens to go with DK Metcalf. 3 or 4 weeks, we have 15 catches on 22 targets, 261 yards, and 3 touchdowns with DK Metcalf. And DK Metcalf has Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. Aaron Rodgers isn't as elite as he used to be, but you still have Aaron Rodgers who can pick apart the defense when he wants to. You then compare that to George Pickens. 23 catches. Mind you, DK has 22 targets, but 23 catches on 37 targets, 357 yards, and 5 touchdowns. George Pickens is tied second with Ibuka and Dunze for second in the NFL for touchdown catches. The only one above them is Amon-Ra St. Brown with 6. George Pickens is second in the league in touchdowns. He is 13th in yards. And he's doing it with not a lot of targets either. He's doing it with 23 catches, which would be 26th in the NFL. And he has 37 targets, which is 20th in the NFL. What George Pickens has done has not only allowed room for Dak Prescott and for other receivers, but he's allowed the running game to be open. You know, you can't stack the box anymore because you're guarding George Pickens. But George Pickens not only has helped CeeDee Lamb the first couple of weeks, but since CeeDee's injury, George has stepped up as a number one receiver. And George has helped these other young receivers in Dallas. Who would have thought Ryan Florney would have blown up this past week like he did? People were talking about Jalen Tolbert. Well, Jalen Tolbert a couple of weeks ago had a pretty decent game. 4 catches on 6 targets, 61 yards. People were like, oh, what is Jalen Tolbert doing now? You have George Pickens making this offense respectable. And that is going to land George Pickens a good contract, or it's going to land him in the hearts of Dallas where they are adamant about getting this deal done with George Pickens. If you ask me, did the Cowboys fleece the Pittsburgh Steelers? 5 games in, they have. This is a no-brainer. George Pickens has played really well in Dallas, a lot better than DK Metcalf in Pittsburgh. But it's not going to be complete until the Cowboys make this move that I'll tell you after a commercial break and a coffee break here on Boom Broadcasting and Fans First Sports Network for Cowboys Morning Brew. Welcome back to Cowboys Morning Brew. I'm your host, Michael Davis, on Boom Broadcasting and Fans First Sports Network. We are talking about George Pickens and this acquisition, and I want people to apologize to George Pickens if they questioned his character or if they questioned the type of receiver he is, because people are like, is he a true number one? The last couple of weeks he has been. George Pickens is everything is advertised and more. And people are asking, did the Cowboys fleece the Steelers on the George Pickens trade? And it only comes based on what happens next year. Is George Pickens a Dallas Cowboy? Now, the Cowboys did trade away Micah Parsons, who would have been the highest non-quarterback paid in the NFL. The Cowboys have a lot of money invested in CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys have a lot of money invested in Dak Prescott. Cowboys have also invested in Jake Ferguson, Tyler Smith, Terrence Steele, DaRon Bland, Trayvon Diggs. They're going to have to re-sign Brandon Aubrey. Might be the richest contract for a kicker, which wouldn't be $100 million. Let's be honest. But he is a necessity. A lot of people don't think of a wide receiver 2 as a necessity. The Cowboys put themselves in this hole when they trade away Amari Cooper for very cheap to the Cleveland Browns. They thought Michael Gallup was going to step up. Michael Gallup got hurt, was never the same. Now the Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb locked up under contract, and they have George Pickens on the opposite side. And after trading for him, and we mentioned in the opening of the show that the Cowboys invested a 3rd and a 5th round pick in George Pickens. So a 3rd round pick is typically a starter on your team, and I would go ahead and say this was a no-brainer that the Cowboys need to bring in George Pickens and help out CeeDee Lamb. But it doesn't matter unless the Cowboys want to bring him back next season. And so you start looking at other options, because you do need to make sure that some of your players are locked up under contract. Of course, trading away Micah opens up to where it's not a necessity or any place of urgency now that DaRon Bland is re-signed as well. Who else do you need to re-sign? And all their attention needs to be on George Pickens, because you could tell me that the Cowboys, they need to invest elsewhere and they can go get a wide receiver in the draft. Let me just point out to you the wide receivers in this draft. People who were mocked on CBS Sports as first-round talent. You have Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. He helped Jane Daniels look really good. You got Malachi Lemon from USC, who's about the mid-round, as well as Carnell Tate in Ohio State. Carnell Tate's not even the best receiver at Ohio State. They do produce really good receivers, but Carnell Tate's not it. Denzel Boston from Washington towards the later round of the first round. Antonio Williams from Clemson. Look how that's helping the Tigers right now. I really do like Jordan Tyson, and I don't want the Cowboys to be drafting high enough to where they get Jordan Tyson, because I think he is going to be maybe anywhere from 8 to 11 in this upcoming NFL draft. But George Pickens is better than all of those guys combined right now. And most importantly, the Cowboys need defense help bad. And you look at a draft class with, I'm just going to say outside of the first, 5 or 10 projected players, you got Delane, the corner from LSU. You got Colton Hood, the defensive back from Tennessee. You got Avion Terrell from Clemson. You have A.J. Harris, like a lot of corners. You have some defensive line help with Caleb Banks from Florida. You have Uiagalelei from Oregon, the edge rusher. You have Romello Height, the linebacker, depending on how – and Arvell Reese, by the way, who could be a really good standout at Ohio State, another linebacker. The Cowboys need to replenish help on this defense and get studs and get dudes. They can't spend time trying to pick a wide receiver and hope he develops when you have a fully developed, very productive receiver in George Pickens. If the Cowboys don't have a third-round pick where they could draft a Michael Gallup. The Cowboys would have to address it in the first or second round, or they wouldn't have another chance until the fourth round unless another trade happens, or if the Cowboys go out and sign another receiver in free agency. But is that connection going to be there? Dak and George have immediate, instant chemistry that you can't duplicate anywhere else, and you certainly can't duplicate it on paper. So with that reason, the Cowboys might have fleeced the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you have to re-sign George Pickens. So far, so good. I will take George Pickens versus J.C. Horn this upcoming Sunday, just like I took George Pickens versus Sauce Gardner last week. But when CeeDee Lamb gets back, presumably after the bye week, if George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are healthy, this offense has dangerous potential, and they could put up 40 a night, and they very well may have to if this defense doesn't get their butts in gear. But I got to get my butt in gear. Wearing a Cowboy shirt, that's not going to be acceptable at work today. So whether you are going to work or school or having a lazy day on the couch, thank you for starting your morning with Cowboys Morning Brew on Boom Broadcasting and Fans First Sports Network. We'll see you back here tomorrow as we continue to dive into what the offense is doing.